America's history is full of memorable figures. Some figures famous for their art, others for their accomplishments and wealth, and some for their crimes. There's a fascination with criminals and their deeds that keep us curiously entertained, whether it be fiction or not. Join me as we dive into this list of 5 of the most notorious American gangsters, where ambition curdled into greed and law met its match and led with a pantheon of outlaws whose names still carry notoriety. These weren't your dime a dozen hoodlums. They were architects of empires, puppet masters of vice, and cold-blooded executioners who wrote their legacies in blood and bullets. Number 1. There was Al Capone, the original Scarface, a man whose brutality changed the way we looked at the American gangster prototype. He carved his dominion in Chicago, the Midwest, where speakeasies flowed with whiskey while Tommy guns sang the deadly tunes of the times. His dangerous reign was an orchestra of bootlegging, racketeering, and violence so exquisite it was almost artful. And I don't say that to glorify him. I mean in a way that he literally put a full city in a controlled vice grip. Until the St. Valentine's Day Massacre painted the Windy City red and etched fear into every citizen and gangster's mind. Even after his arrest, from his Alcatraz perch, Capone's shadows stretched deep into the curious minds of those lingering outside of the criminal underworld. His legacy is nothing less than the terror he sowed into the fabrics of the Midwest. Number 2. Then there was Dutch Schultz, a man whose volatility was as legendary as his temper. He wasn't a king, but more so a wild bull that charged with rage, leaving a trail of destruction in his path. His war with rival mobs were spectacles of bloodshed. He lived fast, dangerously, and died young, after being gunned down in a tavern. His kingdom dissolving like a mist in the morning sun. Dutch Schultz was a cautionary tale written in bullet points, a stark reminder that even the most audacious empires built on a fury have a shelf life shorter than a gangster's alibi. Number 3. Now we're gonna saddle up to Bonnie and Clyde, the Depression-era darlings whose love story was an outlaw ballad sung in stolen cars and flickering neon. They weren't gangsters in the traditional sense, but desperados on a Bonnie and Clyde-shaped joyride, robbing banks with a Bonnie and Clyde style and leaving a trail of bewildered sheriffs and swooning flappers in their wake. Their end, a hail of bullets on a dusty Louisiana road, was as tragic as it was inevitable, a final verse in a poem of rebellion etched in stolen loot and spilled gasoline. Their history is still smeared into the streets of the southern plains to this day. Number 4. We'll raise a glass to John Dillinger, the Depression-era's personal Robin Hood, the man who became a magician to get out of the jailhouse. He was not a constant monster. He was also a charmer, a folk hero who danced circles around J. Edgar Hoover along with his G-men, all the while turning every bank vault into his personal playground. He robbed the rich, eluded the law, and captured the hearts of those in poverty. His escapades splashed across newspapers. His death was delivered by a rain of bullets outside a Chicago movie theater. It was the final curtain falling on a life that blurred the lines between criminal and folk hero. Number 5. Meet Lucky Luchino, the original 5 points dandy whose suits were as sharp as his mind and the moves he eventually made. He wasn't a man of brute force, but one with a charismatic vision which aided into weaving alliances and territories like a spider spinning its web. He orchestrated crime like a symphony, bringing order to the chaos that was brought between the rival gangs with the creation of the Commission, the Mafia's governing body. His legacy wasn't one of bloody brawls, but of hushed backroom deals and cold calculated power plays. He may not have ruled with a Tommy gun, but Luciano's dominion was purely absolute, along with his ambitious influence. He grew a slow creeping vine that choked the life out of legitimate businesses and left law enforcement gasping for air. Charles Lucky Luciano will always be praised in the world of the Mafia. He was, in a sense, one of the founding fathers of organized crime in the United States of America. These were only a light handful of the rebellious titans who have reigned over the American underworld, their names drilled into the conversations of smoky bars and echoing down the corridors of history. They were folks whose hearts were full of ambition, violence, and certain perverse genius. Their stories are folklore to some, and tragic family memories to others, but an interesting taboo in equal measure. So remember them, not as heroes, but as the ghosts of a bygone era. Reminders that human nature, when combined with ambition, regardless of the time in history, can lead to the weaving of a tapestry that is just as much intriguing and captivating as it is deadly.